Being born a human was not always this much of a sweet deal, no matter how often the internet tells you modern life sucks. Some moments in history make today's headaches, all the doom scrolling and tax season anxiety, look like bonus rounds. And historians love to argue over the single absolute worst window to be dropped into the world, like spin the wheel and welcome to actual hell kind of bad luck. So brace yourself, because we are about to drop through some of the roughest birth lotteries ever documented by actual experts, and the list might surprise you. The first gut punch is the year 536. No joke, the historian Michael McCormick once called it the worst year to be alive. Not because of wars or a killer new disease, but because the sun just stopped working right. All right, not literally, but close. A volcanic eruption so massive that it belched up ash and debris into the atmosphere, shrouding parts of Europe, Asia, and the Middle East in a weird, dim twilight for over 18 straight months. Crops died, prices soared, snow fell in China in the middle of summer, and hungry people everywhere got real desperate, real fast. Jordans, a 6th century historian, wrote about great tribulations descending on people's heads. And let's be honest, if eggs suddenly cost 20 times more and the sky looked like permanent dusk, I would be tribulating too. But just as you might figure it could not possibly get grimmer, the misery got an encore. A measly 4 years later, the so-called Plague of Justinian swept in. Think the Black Death, but it hit the Mediterranean first. Estimates suggest upward of 25 million people, maybe half the population of the region, died coughing their lungs out before anyone could even name what was killing them. Talk about piling on. Quick checkpoint. So far we have famine, darkness, and a pandemic that makes 2020 feel like a backyard flu party. But here is where it gets weirdly competitive. Some researchers insist that being born in 14th century Europe during the Black Death, a sickness so lethal it wiped out an estimated 1 out of every 3 people on the continent, was even worse. Giovanni Boccaccio, who survived it, described people with black boils, whole towns emptying out, and a kind of chaos where people stopped caring if their neighbors lived or died. Thing is, it was so fast and so lethal that if you survived, you suddenly lived in a world with higher wages, more land, and better food. So yes, it was a nightmare lottery ticket, but if you drew a lucky number, your odds improved fast. Which brings up a sinister paradox. Sometimes, the worst decades for most people end up oddly lucky for a rare few. If chronic suffering, not just dying young, sounds worse, then prehistoric hunter-gatherers during persistent ice ages might take the top prize. The average lifespan may be 20 to 25 years, usually cut short by infection, starvation, or a predator deciding you looked like lunch. Around the Younger Dryas event 12,000 years ago, things got wild. The climate seesawed like someone's toddler found Godzilla mode on Mother Nature. Skull studies show stunted growth and signs of serious hunger in bodies from that era. Want a spark of hope? Some say the worst time to be born is now. Since you cannot just check out early, you are stuck worrying about nuclear weapons, climate crisis, and psychic exhaustion. But here's the catch. If you're watching this, you already made it through the historical gauntlet and landed in a century where clean water, antibiotics, and even ice cream are real things. Want to see how tiny tweaks in history topple empires and change lives? Tap subscribe so you never miss the next domino. Back to our pain parade. There is an argument that captive lives in American slavery, or as Mongol conquest subjects in the 13th century, may trump the climate disasters. When Genghis Khan's armies rolled through, entire cities vanished. Historians estimate tens of millions died, and the survivors, well, their new lives were not exactly winning the lottery. The Mississippi slave markets, described by historian Ira Berlin, saw children torn from families and adults reduced to statistics, year after year, decade after decade. Honestly, deciding which misery takes the literal cake comes down to whether you think unpredictable apocalypse or scheduled suffering is worse. Zooming out, survival has never been guaranteed. Every ugly slice of history has someone soldiering through, and someone else, sometimes right next door, stumbling into unbelievable luck. So if I had to rank the single worst time to greet the world by crying and pooping on the nearest relative, I would hand the morbid trophy to the 530s. Famine, cold, apocalyptic sky, and plague. No antibiotics, no Netflix, barely any bread. And yet, here we are, grumbling about traffic. Perspective is one hell of a coping mechanism.